Today, we are going to build a mental toolkit. We're tackling one of the biggest thinkers in history, Aristotle, and we're going to boil down all his massive work, from his physics to his categories, into a really powerful three-part operating system for making sense of, well, pretty much everything. All right, let's jump right in.
You know, it all really kicks off with a question that, let's be honest, every single one of us has asked. You look around at the world, and reality can just feel messy, you know? It's random, it's overwhelming. How do you even begin to get a handle on it all? This is the exact problem Aristotle decided he was going to solve over 2,000 years ago.
So, yeah, try to forget that image you might have of some stuffy old philosopher in a toga. Instead, I want you to think of Aristotle as a master organizer, the first great systematizer. He wasn't just sitting around asking abstract questions, he was actually building a practical framework, a set of tools for observing, for categorizing, and for understanding the world as it actually is.
Right, so if you're building an operating system for reality, where do you even begin? You have to start at the most basic level possible. Before we can even talk about the world, we have to agree on what the world is fundamentally made of. What are the non-negotiable building blocks of it all?
And this brings us to Aristotle's first and arguably his most important concept, substance. He lays this out in his book, Categories. Now, I know that quote sounds a little dense, a bit academic, but the core idea behind it is actually incredibly simple. He's just trying to nail down what is fundamentally real, the stuff that doesn't need anything else to exist.
So what he's talking about, what he calls primary substance, it's basically all the individual things you can actually point to. It's not the general idea of a horse, but that specific horse standing in the field. It's not some abstract concept of a person, but you, me, Socrates. For Aristotle, these are the absolute bedrock of existence.
And to make this crystal clear, he sets up this comparison between primary substance and what he calls, you guessed it, secondary substance. So if the individual person, Socrates, is the primary substance, then the general categories he fits into, like man or animal, those are secondary. They're real, sure, but they're kind of one step removed from the actual concrete thing.
And here's the absolute kicker, the main takeaway from all this. Reality is built from the ground up. As Aristotle himself says, if these primary substances didn't exist, it would be impossible for anything else to exist. You just can't have the category horse if there are no actual individual horses running around. It's a simple idea, but it's so profound because it anchors his entire system in the real, tangible world. All right, so we've got our basic building blocks for what's real. Check. What's next? Well, now we need to figure out how to think and talk about all this stuff accurately. And this brings us to the second part of our toolkit, the rules of logic. He starts with this other really simple but brilliant observation from his work on interpretation. Just take a single word, any word. Man, white, runs. By itself, can that word be true or false? No, of course not. It's just a label. It doesn't claim anything. It's only when you start sticking them together, he says, when you combine them to make a statement, an affirmation or a denial, like the man is white, that's when truth or falsehood even becomes a thing we can talk about. Now we've got a proposition, something we can actually test against reality. This is the basic unit of all logical thought. But okay, how do you chain these statements together to discover new truths? Well, for that, Aristotle gives us his most famous logical tool of all, the syllogism. His definition here is super precise. A syllogism is basically a structure that guarantees you a true conclusion, as long as your starting points, your premises, are true. And this is the classic example that just makes it all click. It's what he called a perfect syllogism. If premise 1, all men are mortal, is true, and premise 2, Socrates is a man, is true, then the conclusion, Socrates is mortal, must be true. It's not a guess, it's not a maybe, it follows by absolute necessity. He basically invented a little machine for generating certain knowledge. So we're almost there. We've got the building blocks of reality, and we've got the rules for thinking about them. But there's one giant piece missing from the puzzle. The world isn't some static photograph, right? It's constantly moving, constantly changing. We need a way to explain why. I mean, just think about it for a second. An acorn turns into a massive oak tree. A block of marble becomes a beautiful statue. A person gets sick and then, hopefully, gets well again. What's the engine driving all these processes? What are the underlying causes for all the motion and change we see all around us every single day? And to tackle this, Aristotle comes up with this incredible framework, his theory of the four causes.
He believed that if you really truly want to understand anything, you have to be able to answer 4 different why questions about it. And to make this super concrete, we're going to use one of his own favorite examples from his book, Physics, a simple bronze statue.
First up, the material cause. This one's the easiest to get. It's simply the "what's it made of?" question. The raw stuff. In our case, for the statue, it's the bronze. It's the underlying matter, the potential that the thing comes from. Second, you've got the formal cause. This is the blueprint, right? The pattern, the structure, the idea. It's not the physical stuff itself, but the form that the stuff is going to take. For our statue, it's the design that exists in the sculptor's mind that's going to turn that lump of bronze into a specific figure.
Third is the efficient cause. Think of this as the actual doer. It's the agent that kicks off the change, the source of the motion. It's the push or the pull that makes something happen. So here, it's the sculptor, her hands, the hammer, the chisel, the thing that actually imposes the form onto the matter.
And finally, we get to the final cause, or what Aristotle called the telos. And for him, this was often the big one, the most important of all. This is the purpose, the end goal, the why it exists in the first place. For the statue, maybe it's to honor a hero, or just to be an object of beauty. It's the whole point of the thing. So let's just step back for a second and look at what we've built here. When you put all 3 of these parts together, what you get is this astonishingly complete and, as it turns out, incredibly enduring toolkit for understanding the world.
What we have is Aristotle's complete toolkit for reality. First, a theory of substance that tells us what's real, grounding everything in the concrete, individual things in the world. Second, a whole system of logic that gives us the rules for building solid arguments. And third, a framework of causality that lets us explain why things are the way they are and why they change. You see, this wasn't just a handful of disconnected ideas. No way. This was an interconnected system. It was one of the first most ambitious attempts in human history to build a truly complete philosophical system. Basically, an operating system for reality itself. It's an absolutely incredible achievement, and it leaves me with one final question for you. When you make a logical argument, when you ask about the purpose of something, when you break a problem down into its basic parts, how much of your own mind, right now, is still running on this ancient, powerful, and enduring Aristotelian software?